Story number 1. Post by Giona. My brother joined a cult and has fallen under a religious psychosis spell. Forgive me if this post is a bit scrambled. I am on my third glass of wine and contemplating life right now. My brother, Brian, and I grew up very close. Movie nights with the family, family dinners, game nights, holidays, family road trips. Very normal. We eventually grew up and now, both in our 20s, moved away from home. I haven't seen him recently, but we text here and there to confirm aliveness. Brian suddenly became extremely religious nearly overnight. I'm talking extremely. Now, I don't judge anyone, but no one in our family is particularly religious and he does not have religious friends. He found a church in his new city that he is giving his life to. He is completely isolated and his only friend is the priest. He is secretive about what church it is and he spends all of his time there. Brian is there late night every day supposedly helping cleaning up, but that just doesn't sound right to me. They took a mission trip to Mexico recently and I can only imagine what in the world went on there. The only media that he consumes is religious. He has no friends outside of the church. He only goes to church outside of work. Before ending each conversation, he will ask, "Are you ready to give your life to God or suffer an H******"? See what I mean? He recently took a trip back home to visit our family and my mom says the whole thing was wrong. He sat silent much of the time, observing. Otherwise, he looked far removed even while looking right at her. His energy filled the room and made her uncomfortable. He was no longer the bubbly and affectionate guy he has always been. He kept his distance and had nothing to say. When he left, she said she doesn't expect he will come back. Once a month, we catch up by playing video games together. We'll play for hours. This is our bonding time. I entertain his religious conversations regardless of my opinion. Our last game night, he had so much fun he wouldn't let me log off until around 2 a.m. I recently found out that he gave his console away to a church member. I was upset. It felt like he didn't think about what that meant. We are not the phone call types, but we loved videos games and played growing up together, so game nights were perfect. He called me the other night to address the issue. He gave it away because his future wife, a premonition, is coming and she wouldn't like him playing with other girls and he doesn't have time for anything except the church. I know this sounds absolutely too insane to be real, but unfortunately it is. He assured me that he will be completely cutting me off because his premonition wife is more important than his relationship with me. He spoke with such clarity that it was terrifying to be so deluded yet so sure of yourself. What type of church influences you to cut off family and friends? He will be moving overseas to find his premonition wife soon. I was shocked. A premonition? Really? Our dad called him and when asked for you to need to cut me off, you must feel for her in another way than as your sister. Brian avoided the question and did not answer. Yeah, I know. How could it get worse than a premonition wife? I'm sick for many reasons. Losing sleep. I fear that my brother is in some sort of cult while under religious psychosis, on top of ruining our relationship with possible feelings towards me. His sister. I'm a mess of confusion. What in the hillbilly F***CK is going on? How could it get worse? My mother believes it's his attempt at removing the temptation, aka me, from his life. I am stuck between wanting to understand what the hell type of church this is and also agreeing, let's not meet. No one knows what to say to me and I can't blame them. I'm mourning what once was our relationship, but the situation gives me chills and I don't know where to go from here. All I can think of is this one quote that I read, the more devout they are, the uglier their faith will become since it is based on a lie. Story number 2. Post by Pristine_Property 327. I was almost kidnapped last summer. AST summer, I was almost kidnapped. I usually walk around my neighborhood, sometimes biking, but mostly on foot. As I was walking, listening to music, a car pulled up beside me. Since I was near someone's house, I didn't think much of it and assumed it was their house they were pulling up to. I was wrong. Just to give you an idea of the difference in size between me and this man, I stand at 5 feet 115 pounds, while he looked to be around 6 feet 3 inches tall, 180 pounds. As he came out his car, he started a conversation with me. He asked, "Where are you headed?" I responded with a short, "Just walking around." He then said, "It's pretty late. Want me to give you a ride home?" I declined, saying, "No, thanks. I don't live in this area." After I made this statement, he looked at me and asked why I was walking alone. I simply ignored him and quickened my pace, causing him to speed up as well. Eventually, I came across a house with its garage open. Without thinking, I ran and seeing an older man sitting in there. I told him that someone was following me and to please help me. He got up and started yelling at the man following me, telling him to fuck off and saying that he had a gun. The man retreated back to his car and sped off. I thanked the garage man and he told me to stay safe. That night, I ran as fast as I could back to my house. So to the men who apparently wanted to give me a ride home, let's not meet. Story number 3. Post by Doginal. There's someone still out there who's really bad at breaking into houses. There are two pieces of context you need to understand this story. Bear with me. 1. I've had severe insomnia since I was a kid, and growing up I was consistently awake until the early morning. 2. The second floor of my house at the time was one room. My bed was in a corner separate from the rest of the room by bookshelves and a wardrobe, but they didn't reach the ceiling and there was no door, so I could see and hear anything happening on the second floor. The upstairs room had a door to the outside that was connected to a nearby hill by a poorly constructed bridge made of 3 long, unsecured boards. The door had bells tied to it because when I did sleep, I would sleepwalk. This happened when I was around 11. I lived in a very rural area in the house I described. One night when my parents were asleep, sometime in the early AM, I heard an aggressive rattling from the outside door. Really aggressive rattling and bells ringing. No idea how my parents didn't wake up. From the sound, it was definitely human, not an animal. I don't think they were trying to pick the lock. It sounded like they had the doorknob in their hands and they were just shaking the door as hard as they possibly could. Trying to brute force it, I guess. Mind you, they're standing on a few wobbling planks of wood around 10 feet off the ground, which was cement, so kicking the door down wasn't exactly a viable option here. They shook the door for several minutes, then took a pause before trying again. They did this repeatedly. As soon as I'd begin thinking they left, the rattling would start again. They couldn't get in because the upstairs door was always locked, due to it being unsafe and all, but the downstairs door to the house was always unlocked. We lived a considerable drive from the nearest house and the road was barely usable anyway, so we just didn't think we needed to lock it, ironically. All this person had to do was try the front door. It happened a second time several weeks later. The exact same pattern: shake the doorknob, stop, shake again. They still didn't try the front door. After that, they never tried it again, as far as I'm aware, despite me going to bed every night expecting them. Which is honestly the best ending one can hope for given the circumstances. Now I live a 9-hour drive from that house and life has gone on. It does feel kinda weird that I have no idea who did it and that I could meet them without even realizing. Maybe I already have. As far as scariest moments of my life go, this makes the top 10. It was that paralyzing fear where you can't move or scream. I couldn't alert my parents. I couldn't do anything. If they'd gotten inside, I probably wouldn't even run. To this day, I have nightmares where something bad happens, and I can't scream. My parents still think I'm lying about all this. After talking with my brother, I found out that he was woken up that night and heard it too. His bed was closer to the door, so he could probably hear it better than me. Despite not having many people, the area I'm from has a high murder and disappearance rate. There was a murder the year this happened that took place on the road I lived on. Maybe the guy they booked for that is my mystery culprit, Ick. TLDR, when I was 11, someone tried to break into my house twice through the back door, which was locked, but never thought to try the front door, which was always unlocked. So to the person who tried to break into my childhood home, I sincerely hope I never get the chance to see your face. Let's not meet. Story number 4. Post by Not Kara. The Closet Man. I'm not too sure how to start this, as most of the stuff I post on Reddit isn't really story-based, but this was something that I will absolutely never forget. About 5 years ago, my two friends, M15, F16, and I, F15, had just started experimenting with weed. We were eager sophomores in high school in a town where there wasn't much to do other than go to a shitty mall or walk around, so we settled on smoking weed in my friend's decked-out storage shed in her backyard. We always had a super fun time. I greened out once, and that's an entirely different story, but it was our main hangout place. Oftentimes I would spend the night at her house, and our other friend would sneak over at night because he lived a decently walkable distance away from us. On this specific night, me and my friend, N, wanted to go to a park near her house and smoke weed/play on the swings, and we decided to call up our other friend, A, and asked him to meet us there. It was 2:30 a.m. when N and I, clumsily, climbed out of her bedroom window into her backyard and fumbled around with the keys to her wooden backyard fence. We made our way to the park, about an 8-minute walk, and waited for A. Once he got there, we were all quite pleased with ourselves and got right down to business. After being decently stoned, we left our stuff and had brought her bag, where we collectively dumped our goods, on top of a hill directly beside the playground, and we beelined for the swings. At the time, we thought we were alone. We were not. It was all fun and games until we saw 3 older people approaching the park, 2 women and a man with a bike. They kept their distance, and while we were aware of their presence, we maintained that we were fine and went about our teenage shenanigans. That was until they started yelling towards us, trying to get our attention. We decided it was best to ignore them, our once fun high turning into stale paranoia. When we looked to the general area of the noises again, roughly 7 minutes later, they were nowhere to be seen. This spooked us a bit, but we had hoped they had gone away for good and left us to our devices. And then we saw a lone bicyclist wandering towards us. Fucking great. As he approached us with friendly conversation, we were obviously trying our best to remain calm and not overreact/act bothered. We were entertaining his comments about us being out so late and questions about what we were doing. He then told us that the 2 women we saw him with earlier were propositioning him for sex, and that he declined because they were ugly. There was a palpable shift in the air when he brought that up with us. He was noticeably much older than us, maybe mid-30s, and we were nervous, incredibly uncomfortable, and high as nuts. Even worse, every time we would end the conversation at hand, the man would absolutely not leave. He asked for our ages, names, where we went to school, where we lived. The questions would not end. We thought telling him our ages would make him go away. Instead, he would push for more. I took the responsibility of keeping up the conversation, where I was subtly looking behind us every chance I got, feeling like he was trying to distract us so someone else could come up and take us. When I asked the man what he does for a living, he said it was quite the funny story. He then proceeded to tell us that he had just gotten out of prison and didn't have a job at the moment, laughing nervously as he dropped a bomb on us. Although we were thoroughly creeped, we laughed with him and nonchalantly asked, "No way." "Ha, what happened, man? to which he began explaining that he would break into people's houses. Pretty bad stuff. But his next comment made our blood run cold. He gave us a rundown of his operation, in which he would sneak into people's houses, quietly slide into their closets, and watch them as they slept at night. Said as though he were describing a simple daily routine to us. And decided this was the best time to go grab her bag. She had pepper spray in our phones, and A and I were left to keep the man company while she grabbed our belongings. When she returned to us, she mustered up all of her courage and sternly told the man to leave us the fuck alone. You know we are underage and you are being creepy as fuck. We want you to leave us alone. After a moment of silence, the man looked at Anne like she was crazy and very loudly shouted at her, saying she was being mean, the lilt in his tone quickly being replaced by rage, which made all of us flinch. He sped away from us on his bike, and began doing circles around the park yelling, "They're over here. I found them. Come get them." We waited for what seemed like forever, keeping an ear out for the whirring of his wheels. We all started panicking about how we would get home. We did not want this erratic home invader to follow us. Anne and I felt awful for A, who had walked here all by himself and insisted he make his way back home the same way. It was approaching 4 a.m. at this point. We had to go back. We readied ourselves to leave. I called A on his phone and we began our journey back home. At first Anne and I walked cautiously through the dark, trying to be as quiet as possible. Then we heard the whirring of bicycle wheels. We booked it. I don't think I've ever run that fast in my whole entire life. We threw open the wooden fence to our backyard and ran to the open window, desperately trying to pull ourselves through as fast as we could. We made it in, but the window would not shut. Anne was resigned, out of breath, and said we should just leave it, but I adamantly yelled at her saying that we needed to, reminding her that the man broke into people's houses. Through sheer willpower, we managed to close the window. I could not sleep for the rest of the night. So, long story short, let's not meet. Especially not if I'll find you in my closet. Story number 5. Post by, fellow boy. A woman keeps calling me begging for help. I work for a university in a resident assistant position. On weekends we usually work in teams of 3 with 2 people walking through a building, and 1 person at the front desk checking people in. While me and my coworker were walking on the 9th floor engaging with students and enforcing the rules of the residence hall. My coworker suddenly received a call on our work phone surprisingly from our on-campus police. She picks up the phone to a woman frantically crying for help. Before she can respond, the phone is hung up. This was especially a scary moment for us because of the authenticity of the woman's crying. Unless it was an audio recording of a movie, I have no doubt that this was a real person in extreme distress and not a prank. The worst part about the whole situation is that we had received the same call a few months before with the same people working at the same time and on the same floor. With our team of 60 plus people, it is extremely unlikely to work with the same 3 co-workers twice. When we started our shift, I actually made a joke that we would get the same phone call, and we did. After getting the phone call twice, we both agreed that they were accidentally redirected 911 calls, especially since the number that was listed was literally the police phone number. We called the non-emergency number, same number, different extension, and talked to the dispatcher, who was not too helpful. I don't really blame him because it is such a random event. He took our names and said he would report it. However, the thing that creeped me out even more is that he mentioned that they haven't received any calls at all that night and therefore nothing could have been accidentally redirected. This is when my mind suddenly clicked. Earlier, near the start of the school year, I had received a call from the same campus police number, and it was just my boss who was asking me to come to her office and help a lost student. As I got the call, I remember panicking as it was a campus police caller ID. This was before either of the calls of the woman crying. I told her about her caller ID being wrong, and she agreed it was weird but retired literally weeks after the talk. At the time I didn't find this weird, but now I look back at it, I think the call begging for help might have come from her office, which is now empty. Me and my coworker walked to the office hallway, which is connected to our building, and tried getting into her office, which was locked. It is important to mention we got the call both times at around 10:40, and it was now completely dark out with no one around, especially in the staff area. All the offices are completely inaccessible to the public, but one room me and my coworker had the key for. We opened the door and found one of the old phones in the office and used it to call our work phone. You guessed it, it rang as campus police. Now we are scared. We cleared the rest of the buildings for anyone in distress and even checked a local emergency pylon students can use to call for help. After finding nothing, we went our separate way and ended our shift an hour after midnight. Now I am sitting here trying to figure out what the fuck that poor woman was calling us for. Why did she hang up? Why did this happen twice with the exact same unlikely circumstances? Why was the caller ID from the police? This is getting long now, but I will make some important notes. Our third coworker is a man with a thick accent. He could not have prank called us from the boss's phone and pretended to be a woman. The first call back in October was of a woman crying and saying please help. The second call I didn't hear as well as my coworker received it. She said it felt different but was definitely a woman crying/begging. I am in an area with a lot of human trafficking and feel a strange sadness/fear that this may be what I heard. I have worked here for 2 years and am good friends with most of our team. No one has experienced this except us. I only have 2 possible theories. The call was a redirect from the police and the dispatcher chose to hide his mistake. Someone snuck into my boss's office and called us begging for help. I am writing this partially because I'm too scared to sleep and partially to know if anyone can think of a better reason for the calls. Story number 6. Post by Lengualenta. They followed my partner to our door. My partner and I had a really unsettling experience tonight, and I can't shake the what-ifs. I was asleep during this incident, but I woke up to the sound of him rushing back inside our apartment and locking the door. When he told me the details, it left me with an uneasy feeling I can't get past. We live in a suburb that has a reputation for being a bit rough, but a lot of the crime and drug problems are contained in the center of the suburb. Our area is quite sheltered from these problems, and during the day, it's busy and full of people, with a university, a hospital, and locals going about their business. At night, the streets near our building are quiet, but not in an unsettling way. It's usually peaceful as we're tucked away from the main road and surrounded by other apartments and a park. However, the past week has made me feel like things are changing. Last week, we heard a couple arguing loudly in the street from our balcony. It escalated quickly and turned physical, so we called the police who intervened. Then, just a few nights later, we saw a car pull up near the park. A different woman jumped out and ran into the trees, hiding while the man in the car drove away. He didn't follow her, but we've seen them in the park before. They look like meat-eat-up gym rats. He's often yelling at her and calling her stupid, among other colorful names. We never saw her come out of the park and didn't even know if she was still hiding. That time, we didn't call the police. Maybe it was the feeling that it wasn't worth reporting unless it got worse, after already reporting an incident a few days prior. Although these were domestic incidents, I think this reluctance to report suspicious occurrences carried over when this encounter happened with my partner. He told me later he didn't want to get a reputation for calling the police over everything, like the boy who cried wolf. But I wish we had done it sooner. At about 1 a.m., my partner took our dogs out for a quick toilet break before bed. When he returned to the building, he noticed a man and a woman standing outside an apartment on the ground floor, quietly talking. He hadn't seen them before, but didn't think much of it, as there are 8 floors in our building with about 12 apartments on each. He entered the lift, and just as the doors were closing, the man stopped them with his hand and asked if my partner could take them to level 7, as they were locked out. They must have followed somebody through the doors to get inside initially. My partner explained that residents can only access their own floors and told him no. Thinking back, they would have had to sprint from where they were to reach the doors before they closed, which is what had me questioning my partner's situational awareness, but I will continue the story. The man shrugged and said any level should be fine, and both he and the woman stepped into the lift anyway. My partner told me that he just froze and was trying to analyze the situation in real time. He said they didn't look like the typical meth users or necessarily threatening, but their energy seemed unpredictable. He didn't know how they'd react if he pushed back. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and he knew something wasn't right. Not wanting to escalate, he let them in the lift. As the lift went up, the man was looking at my partner in silence, while the woman was crouching towards our dogs making kissy faces. Even this contrast was unsettling for my partner as there were no obvious threats here. In fact, you could argue that she was being nice. When the lift reached our floor, the couple told him to step out first, and then they followed him. My partner walked quickly to our apartment, noticing they weren't too close but were definitely behind him. As soon as he got inside, he locked the door immediately and started listening. For the next 5 or 10 minutes, we could hear them pacing up and down the hallway, talking in low voices. We couldn't make out what they were saying, but their calm tone made it even creepier. At one point, they opened the fire escape door across from our apartment and held it open while still talking in low voices. Eventually, they let it close, and after that, everything went quiet. Since we don't have a peephole, my partner got on the floor by the door, trying to see them through the crack underneath. I crouched with him, but he could only make out faint movements before they finally left. An hour later, after we were certain the hallway was silent, we carefully opened the door and checked the hallway and fire escape together. They were definitely gone, but my partner was still shaken. He kept replaying the situation in his head, wondering if they could have hurt him if he'd refused to let them stay in the lift. I insisted that we report them to the police, and ended up providing their descriptions, just in case they were still loitering around. I wish he hadn't let them see where we live, but I understand why he froze. He keeps saying their energy was off, and he didn't know what they might do if he told them no. I'd like to think I'd have refused to let them in the lift at all, but honestly, I don't know how I'd react in the moment. The thought of what could have happened if they'd lashed out makes my stomach turn. The whole week has made me feel like our area isn't as safe as it once was, and this incident was the final straw. Why would they follow him to our floor, linger for so long, and hold the fire escape door open before committing to leaving? Their calmness only made it more unnerving. If they were truly dangerous, they would have forced their way inside as my partner opened the door. It leaves me with some hope that they were just opportunists, and maybe I don't need to worry about them coming back tonight. The door is double bolted and the extra lock is on. My partner is now sleeping soundly, but I'm still wide awake and alert. To the man and woman who thought any level should be fine and followed my partner to our door, let's not meet. Edit, LOL, I'm actually a gay dude, but thanks for the unsolicited relationship advice in the comments. I know assumptions are made about one's gender based on who they are dating, which don't bother me personally. However, I did not realize how quickly incels would jump on the opportunity to talk about my feminine need for protection and the need to throw my relationship away for it. Even if I needed protection, even if I were a woman, and even if I agreed with you, I certainly wouldn't want or need any form of toxic masculinity in my life. Women don't need strong men, we all just need less creeps in the world.